Hi everyone, today I will share some tips on creating painterly portraits with the help of Capture One. Coming up. Hi, my name is Kasia Zmokla. I'm an artist and photographer. I've been photographing for over 2 decades and teaching for 5 years. In this video, I'm going to share with you some of this experience and show you simple tips on creating moody, painterly portraits in Capture One and how to get from this to this. And don't forget to click the link up here or down below and you can watch my masterclass on Capture One image editing for free. Enjoy! Okay, so in one of my latest videos, I've been talking about editing imperfect images. And I mean really imperfect, really soft focus, under or heavily overexposed and so on. And since I really enjoyed the editing process, I've decided to do something even more crazy. So I have taken this image more than 10 years ago, and this was one of the many experiments that I've done with my really good friend Kasia. So here I have convinced her to play around with light torch, and that way I've been able to create sort of multiple exposure in one image. So this is the first tip. If you want to create this sort of painterly effect and you don't want to round trip into Photoshop, you need to bring creative, sort of abstract, even I would say, image into Capture One right from your camera. Because there is not much in Capture One that you could do in terms of blurring things around or copying and pasting over. So this is not the case when we are working in Capture One, but what we are getting is really high quality image in the end. So it is really worth trying out, playing around with this sort of experiments, and then you can process them in Capture One as I did with this picture. So let's jump over to the original image. Let me just show you how the image looked like at the very beginning. So you can see that this is really looking bad. It is so heavily underexposed and we are even blowing out highlights here. So if I switch on the exposure warning, the image basically contains 90% of the area is underexposed. This is the blue overlay, and where I have the red overlay, this is overexposed pixels. But despite all these flaws, I still really love these images. So if you would like to create similar experiments, you don't need any special equipment. All you need is a camera that you will be using to take these images and light torch. So you can simply ask your model to flash the light, then change the position very slightly and flash again. So you will be working with long exposure and the camera will record the movement. And as you can see here, the results you will be getting are quite unpredictable. So I had no idea what can happen here. So all the movement that we can see here in the eye and how these eyelashes turned out in the end, this was something created in a spontaneous way. We had no plan for this. We were just fooling around basically. So first of all, as I've just mentioned, you need to have this sort of abstract soft image with movement. You can see the movement here as well in the structure near the eyebrows. So once you have an image like that, you are ready to jump over to Capture One and start processing it. So let's see what I've done with this image. I'm going to switch off all these layers, and on my background layer I'm going to get rid of the noise simulation, the film grain simulation, as I have applied it here. And I've mentioned this several times in the other videos that the film grain simulation can be always only applied to the background layer. Okay, so let's take a look. So first of all, I've been working on white balance. On the background layer, I haven't done anything. Here on the white balance layer, you can see how massive is the shift. So let's take a look at the white balance. So this is the original values, this is what we got, and this is how I have adjusted these values in Capture One. So obviously the white balance is totally off. This is what you can expect when you are working with torch light, and this is completely fine. So here I've just pushed the Kelvin slider from the left to the right. So the original value was 4000 and something, and I went up to 6400. I wanted to get rid of the blue color. It was a bit too much. So the image is already very dynamic, very abstract, very mysterious. The face is emerging from this pitch black background, and I wanted to bring a little bit more of reality. So that's why I have adjusted the white balance that way. Of course, I wasn't going for the beautiful typical skin tones that we are aiming towards, but I just wanted to depart from the bluish realm and go towards something a little bit more resembling human face. So I've done this with the Kelvin slider. Here I was working with the light temperature, and with the second slider with the tint I have removed the pink color cast as well. So the white balance can be really helpful when you are starting out with images looking like this. You can take them to some starting point that can be a little bit more flexible. Okay, let's jump over to the next layer. So on this one I've been working with the Hdr adjustment. So before I have this pitch black background, I'm interested in the eyes. I can see that there is some potential, there is some highlights, details in the eyebrows, in the eyelashes, but I need to work on this with HDR. So what I've done here is I've been working mostly, maybe not mostly, but the highest value that I pushed the sliders is here with the highlights. I had this super bright area over her nose. This one, this patch of light that was coming directly from the torch, and I wanted to get more balanced surface here. So I just wanted to get rid of this. It was basically pulling the face apart. So I went down with highlights towards the negative 95. With shadows I've pushed the slider towards 55. So this basically opens up shadows and gives me more detail here in the eyelashes, in the eye area. So again, this is before, this is the after, and you might say that it looked better before applying this adjustment, but remember that I'm going to still work on the luminosity adjustments. I'm going to fine-tune it with curves. So what I've done here was just to focus on recovering the detail in the shadows, so the eyes. I didn't work locally. I could use either the style brush and open up shadows just here, or use a layer with a mask, but it wouldn't give good results because the deep blacks are present everywhere here, and if I would be treating this little area here, it would look inconsistently in comparison with the background. So I prefer to just apply the shadow recovery over the whole layer, and then I will be working with luminosity adjustments on curves, and I will see where I will take the image further. But this was a really conscious decision. And the last value that I have adjusted with the HDR tool is here, the last slider, blacks. So I've opened the blacks, specifically blacks here with this slider. The shadow slider will manipulate in the range a little bit wider. If we just take a look at the histogram, we can see that this is really low key image. Almost all of the data is gathered here near to the left edge of the graph, and I'm obviously clipping all the dark tones here. I'm clipping the blacks, but it's perfectly fine. This is the idea for this image. So this is my adjustment on the HDR layer before and after. So after these adjustments, we can see more of the female face here. Before, maybe it wasn't even clear to all of you that this is the face. So like this, we can see just a bit of her hand, her arm here emerging from darkness, and the face. Let's move further. So on this layer, as I've just mentioned before, I've been playing around with luminosity levels with curves. Let's grab curves. So let's take it from here and let's make it larger so we can see more precisely what was done here. So this is my Luma curve. Let's first take a look at the Rgb curve. So I might at times work only with Rgb curve, but hardly ever I have images where I've processed the image only with Luma. At times it might work, especially with photos where you spend a lot of time on color grading and you are super happy with the color and you don't want to make any further adjustments. So in this case you would be working with Luma curve, because Luma curve will never increase saturation of colors in your images. So here you will be manipulating with luminosities, you will be working on lights, shadows without affecting color. But when we are talking about the Rgb curve, with this curve, whenever you are increasing contrast, whatever you are doing here, it will always affect saturation. And you can already see, if I switch off this layer, I know that I have applied some strong contrast as well. But if you would try to focus only on color, you can see how strongly it pushes saturation of these tones. So remember, the Rgb curve will always increase saturation, and I don't mind this at all in case of this image. It was already taken from this bluish something towards here, and when I'm processing images like this, when I'm basically completely open to any effects, I'm completely open to experimenting. So I'm taking whatever is coming at me and I'm deciding if I'm happy with the result, or I can just ditch it if I don't like the effect. So let's take a look at the Rgb curve. So first of all, here I have lifted my black point. You can see that I've changed the position. Here the output is already 11, so this makes the black tones a little bit less dark, a little bit softer, and this is reflected here in the histogram. If I switch off this layer, take a look at the histogram. Before we were clipping the blacks, we had all the data gathered near to the left edge, just clipping all the blacks. And after lifting the black point here on the Luma curve, I've pushed my data towards the right. We still have this very sharp peak of information. We still have most of the data here in this range, but we are making these dark tones a bit softer, a bit velvety, if I could say so. So this is my Rgb curve. So I have lifted the black point, then I have lifted my sort of bright midtones. This range, it could be some of the brighter tones here over the face. If I hover over the image, we can see the vertical orange line moving across the graph. So the point where I have lifted the luminosity values would be somewhere here. So let's maybe change the cursor, so here I'm more precise. And then I have added the third control point and I have pulled my curve down. So this created this S-shaped curve. I have added contrast. Remember, the steeper the curve gets, the more contrast you will have in your image. Okay, let's now take a look at the Luma Curve. So here basically I've decided to brighten everything. Of course, it took me few minutes. I've been tweaking those luminosity ranges, jumping from the Rgb curve to the Luma Curve, adjusting these points here and going back to Rgb up to the point where I was happy with the final result. So this is what I got on my luminosity curves layer. So this is again before, very soft image, sort of grayish. I have cropped it out. There was a little bit more negative space around. I still love the negative space. I think this creates a bit more of depth, especially seeing this arm here towards the lower right corner, and if I would have tighter crop, I think the image wouldn't benefit as much from such cropping. So I'm happy with the crop that I have created. So I have zoomed out. You can see that the image is sort of grayish. We have plenty of this dark background, and typically it would make colors to pop when you have even a bit of color and it is surrounded by dark or black tone. This will make those colors stronger. So especially the skin tones, the color that is on her face, on her lips, it is very subdued, it is very muted, and I just want to make it a bit stronger. And manipulating with the curves, especially with the Rgb curve, it helped me to increase saturation. The blue is way stronger now, and the same goes for the tones, for the colors that are visible here over her face. So this is what I've done in terms of luminosity adjustments. Let's now talk about color. And by the way, if you are getting value from my videos, if you enjoy my channel, I will really appreciate if you subscribe to the channel, if you like the video, and if you leave me your comment, your feedback. I'm super curious your feedback, especially on these experimental edits. I want to know what you are thinking about this, and I would like to hear your suggestions for future videos. Okay, let's jump back to our processing. So on this layer, you can see that I've made quite a big shift. This is what we've done up till the luminosity adjustment layer, and now we are on the color layer. So here I've been working with the advanced editor and color balance, and most of the adjustments were performed with color balance tool. So this gave me the biggest change. So we can begin with the color balance tool. So what I've done here is on the master channel. This is the channel where you will create a color cast over the whole image. So before, if I take a look at the image, I would say definitely that I want to still lift those blacks. I want to go for more velvety effect, and I would like to apply this color cast to unify the whole image. Now we have plenty of contrast, and I want to definitely keep this image in this mysterious dark mood, but maybe create a little bit more softness, delicacy, to make the image a little bit more feminine. So on this layer where I've been working with the master, I have added very strong yellowish color cast over the whole image. So I've pushed the saturation really far, so this slider controls saturation, and I went for this sort of cool yellow tone. It is almost going inside the greens here, so this is what I was after. Let's jump to the shadows. So here in this channel I've been working on adjusting both color and luminosity for those darkest tones in this image. So it is easy to guess that manipulating with the shadow slider in the color balance tool, it had a massive effect over the whole image, since the image is very dark. So what I've done here, I've added a hint of blue, maybe a bit more than a hint, because I've pushed the saturation as well quite strongly here, but the super important operation is here. I have lifted those blacks with this slider that controls luminosity. If I double click on this handle, this will reset the slider. So this is how the image would look like with all the color adjustments that I've performed with the color balance tool, but without lifting the shadows. And here I would say this is really making the image the way I wanted to see it. So I don't want to push it too far upwards. This will lose the contrast. This will make the image too soft. So somewhere around here that we are still this sort of coolish, dark, velvety background, but there is conscious artistic decision in it. So it is not just pitch black. Let's now jump over to the midtones. So here I have added just a bit of warm orangey yellowy tone to the midtones, just a bit, nothing really strong here. And when it comes to the highlights, I have added some quite strong bluish cyanish tone to it. So this is what I've done with the color balance tool. In case of this particular image, I didn't work a lot with color editor. What I've done was, first of all, I have taken care of this quite strong magentish little line here going along her nose and here around the nostril. So this bothered me. I like the blue that is visible here over the highlights, but this color was somehow off. I don't like it, and it is visible here as well. So all I've done here, I just picked this specific tone from here. I was working with the picker and I've pushed down saturation. This is the middle value. The first one is hue. This controls color, so it is reflected here in this slider. The middle one is saturation, the next slider, and the last one is lightness. So with the sort of magentish, pinkish, powdery tone, I went down with saturation. I haven't done anything else. So this is before the adjustment. I will maybe zoom in. This is before and this is the after. So I've taken down saturation of the magentish tone, and this helped me to make the whole image more balanced. Then I have sampled the blue. So again, I was working with the color picker. So I have sampled the blue tone, and here I have just very slightly pushed lightness. So this would be before and after. I was really happy with the color that came out of the camera after just the white balance correction. So this is all I've done here. When you are adding more lightness to the color, it will get stronger, it will get brighter. As the last step, I've decided to take down saturation of the whole image just a bit. So I've been working with this plus icon. This created this last adjustment. So whenever you are seeing this color wheel in comparison to this one or this one, you will be always adjusting the whole image. You don't have any specific color or any specific range selected. You are affecting all the colors in your image equally. So here all I've done was to just push S saturation towards the negative, almost 7, 6.9. So this is what I've done on my color layer, and I would say when you are working on this sort of projects, it can be something that makes or breaks the image. Unless you would come up with really beautiful colors right out of the camera. But I would say that more often you won't, because when you are experimenting this way, when you are working with such a terrible light and just a torch, you will have really unpredictable, crazy results, and let's say it's straight, probably 80 or 60% of these images will turn out really bad and you can ditch them right away. But this is what we are after. We are playing here, we are experimenting, we are not going towards some beautiful fashion portrait. No, nothing like this at all. All we are doing is just giving ourselves the freedom to experiment. Okay, so this is what we've done with our color. Let's now go to the next layer where we will have some final touches. So here I've decided to work with these areas in the image, there's very few, very small areas where we can actually see some texture. And here I'm talking about the eyelashes. I have no idea how we have created this effect that the eyelashes are white. I guess that was the super strong light from the torch that hit the eyelashes. So this is what you are getting when you are open to experimentation. There was no makeup artist, nothing. We've done this just with this crazy lighting. So on this layer I've been adding quite a lot of clarity and structure. So let's jump over to the exposure tab and let's scroll down. So this is my clarity, and you can see here clarity and structure values. Very, very strong values. This is what you want to avoid if you are working with more natural images, no matter portrait or landscape. You would never want to go further than, let's say, 20, 25, 30. It depends on an image, but less is more in case of clarity. But when you're working with an image like this, you can really go crazy. So this is the before the adjustment and this is the image after. Here I've been working with a mask. You can see here I wasn't precise and I have created this patch in this area of her forehead. Let's just hit M. So this will show the mask. I've been really careful here because when I was working initially with way bigger brush, I just wanted to make one touch here and cover everything. This created a lot of noise in the dark areas in the background. So that's why I have reduced size of my brush and I was working with really small brush. I have applied just few of these strokes and I just want to actually work a bit with eraser and remove this part here. Okay, let's go like this. Just to remove the spot that was visible here. Okay, there is still this edge and this is bothering. Let's go lower with a flow and let's create way smoother transition. Okay, this is way better. So again, before and after. And remember, whenever you are adjusting either sharpening or when you are working with clarity or structure, it is a super good idea to take a look at your image at least at 100%. So I'm now at 300. Let's go down a bit. So this is what I should be looking at because I'm on a retina display, and if I would be on other screen, 100% is the perfect value. So let's again take a look. This is before applying clarity and structure and after. I have applied the structure as well to really bring out this tiny little hair that are under her eyebrow, to show the movement, to show those lines visible here. And something happened here. I have no idea what it was. Probably some light reflected by my friend's hair. Okay, so this is my clarity with the mask. Let's zoom out and let's see the mask again. So here I have applied clarity. Let's now jump over, and on the very last layer I have applied sharpening. So you can see, if I zoom into 200%, you can see that this is adding some grain, but I don't mind. So this image at this stage already looks like a painting when you have most of the area very soft, very muted, and just these parts here around the eyes with the strong movement, strong color. So I decided to add sharpening over the whole image to add some grain, and I will add as well some film grain simulation in the end. So here we have the sharpening. So let's again take a look. This is before adding the sharpening, and this is the after. Maybe it's a little bit too much. I might fine-tune it with a brush, especially here around this line, but for the sake of this video I want it to be visible for you on the YouTube video. Okay, let's now add film grain simulations. I'm going to jump over to the detail tab, and here I will go for silver rich, and I think this image will benefit from quite a strong film grain. So I want to create this uniform film grain across the whole image, so it will be visible everywhere over those brightest areas and those dark areas. So this will put them together, this will combine the whole image together, and it will make the image look a little bit less digital. This is what you are getting when you are not afraid of experimenting with your camera and processing inside Capture One. Don't forget to watch the free class. Link is available down below, and you can click on this thumbnail to watch the other video that I've done on experimental editing. Thanks for watching. This was Kasia Zmokla. I will see you soon in the next video.